Jacob was out here. He was saying that he was a little neutral in the quarterback competition. He wants everyone to have fun and go out here and have a lot of fun. How are you feeling with everything going on?
I like that mentality.
Yeah.
I had a barber competition, and I felt the same way. There's no such thing as a winner and loser. I just want everybody to do their best. So I agree. That's when you appreciate life to a different extent and don't care about the small battles in life, because those mean a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, they don't really mean much.
Is Shedeur going to win the Browns quarterback competition?
I pray my boy do win that competition. Right now, I'm worried about our season, what we got going on. But I pray my boy do win whatever they got going on.
Day 13 of Browns training camp may have just made this quarterback battle even harder to call. After nearly 2 full weeks of camp, after all the rotation talk, all the first-team reps, all the pressure on Deshaun Watson to create separation, Shedeur Sanders is still right there. That is the part Cleveland cannot ignore anymore. This was supposed to be the stage where experience starts taking over, where the veteran quarterback begins to control the room and the younger challenger starts falling behind. Instead, Day 13 gave us another reminder that this competition is still very much alive. And the most important thing here is that Watson did not have a disaster. That would actually make this much easier to explain. He had efficient stretches, showed some veteran awareness, and made throws that looked like the kind of plays you expect from a quarterback who has already seen a lot of NFL football. He handled pressure well on certain reps, got the ball out before the rush fully arrived, and showed that he can still use anticipation when the coverage tightens up. But that is exactly why this battle is becoming so interesting. Watson can have a solid day and still walk away without creating that obvious gap over Shedeur Sanders. That is where Shedeur keeps forcing his way into the conversation. His raw numbers were not perfect, but the way he played matters more than just looking at one completion percentage. According to the tracker discussed after practice, Shedeur finished 13 for 21 while Watson was 12 for 17. On paper, Watson had the cleaner percentage, but camp evaluation is not that simple. You have to look at the kind of throws being attempted, the pressure around the quarterback, drops from receivers, timing, pocket control, and what happens when the play is not perfectly clean. Shedeur showed several things on Day 13 that matter much more than one box score number.
You found out, I guess, maybe before the walkthrough that you weren't going to be taking the 1 reps, with the pads on that day. Did you take that as a positive and not let that become anything where you wondered why that was?
I don't think with the coaches that we have, you ever wonder. I think whatever is said is direct. Obviously, it's like we was informed, and everything the right way, so it was never a miscommunication between us. I just don't really appreciate sometimes if things happen and if things happen and y'all just jump on the coach like he just tripping or something. I don't really like that because it creates just extra, and I hope we all here to want to win, and be a team and be a franchise.
One of the biggest was how comfortable he looked attacking the middle of the field. He was not just living on easy throws outside the numbers or quick underneath completions. He was willing to challenge tighter windows and trust the timing of the route. That is important because NFL quarterbacks cannot wait until every receiver is completely open. By the time that happens, the defense has usually already recovered. The quarterback has to trust what he sees and release the ball before the window fully opens. That confidence showed up several times, especially when Shedeur had defenders close to the throwing lane. He kept giving his receivers chances in areas where the margin for error was small. That does not mean every throw was perfect, but it does show a quarterback becoming more comfortable with NFL timing and NFL spacing. And when you compare that to some of the criticism around him from last season, this is exactly the kind of progress Cleveland should be paying attention to. The pocket movement might have been even more important. One of the issues people pointed out with Shedeur before was his tendency to drift backward instead of climbing forward. That sounds like a small detail, but it can completely change the way protection works. Offensive linemen are building a pocket at a certain depth. If the quarterback keeps fading backward, he makes the edge rusher's path shorter and basically creates his own pressure. On Day 13, Shedeur looked much more controlled in that area. He stepped forward instead of immediately escaping backward, kept his eyes downfield, and trusted the shape of the pocket. That is the kind of development that coaches notice. Big throws are going to get replayed. Deep completions are going to get people talking. But coaches are also watching whether the quarterback is making the offensive line's job easier, whether he understands where the pocket is supposed to be, and whether he can move inside it without dropping his eyes. That is where the battle with Watson gets more serious. Watson's biggest advantage should still be experience. He should be the quarterback who processes things faster, understands pressure more naturally, and controls the offense with veteran confidence. Shedeur does not have to become more experienced than Watson overnight. He just has to keep shrinking that gap, and that is exactly what Day 13 appeared to show. Shedeur is not just making exciting plays anymore. He is starting to improve in the areas that were supposed to separate Watson from him: pocket discipline, timing, pre-snap understanding, handling pressure, and decision-making all matter in this competition.
Shedeur, efficient, effective, delivering some good balls. Here it is, finding an out for Isaiah Bond. This is one of those tight coverage throws, right? And I always feel like, I don't know if this is just happens to happen. Maybe this is what I'm noticing, but I typically notice like certain things Shedeur is like, again, not sure if it's intentional, but doing at a high pace. And this week happens to be these contested catches, getting these tight window throws in, being able to beat.
Every improvement in those areas makes it harder for Cleveland to point to experience alone and say the decision is obvious. That is the real pressure now. Watson does not need Shedeur Sanders to fail. He needs the difference between them to stay clear. But after Day 13, that difference is becoming harder to see. The deeper this Browns quarterback battle goes, the more one thing starts to stand out. Shedeur Sanders is not just trying to beat Deshaun Watson with highlight throws anymore. He is starting to challenge him in the exact areas where Watson should have the clearest advantage. That is what makes this competition far more serious than a simple camp battle between a veteran and a younger quarterback. Experience is supposed to create separation. Processing is supposed to create separation. Understanding pressure, changing plays before the snap, and knowing where to go with the football before the defense reveals everything are supposed to be the things that protect Watson in a battle like this. But Shedeur keeps showing signs that he is becoming more comfortable in all of those areas. One of the most important parts of evaluating a quarterback has nothing to do with how pretty the final throw looks. It is what happens before the ball is even snapped. NFL defenses are constantly trying to disguise pressure, rotate safeties, show one coverage, and play another, and force the quarterback into a bad decision. A young quarterback who cannot handle that usually looks fine in a clean drill and completely different once the defense starts changing the picture. That is why the pre-snap side of Shedeur's development matters so much. There have now been examples of him getting to the line, identifying what the defense is giving him, communicating an adjustment, and putting the offense into a better situation. That does not mean he has suddenly mastered everything at the line of scrimmage. Nobody should pretend that. Watson still has far more NFL experience, and that experience matters. But the gap is what Cleveland has to watch. If Shedeur can make the simple checks, recognize obvious pressure looks, and keep the offense out of bad plays, then Watson's experience becomes less of an automatic winning argument. Suddenly, the coaching staff has to compare the rest of their games much more closely. And that is where Shedeur's style starts creating problems for the veteran. He has shown more willingness to push the football into the middle of the field and challenge tighter coverage. That can be risky if the quarterback does not understand what he is seeing, but when the read is correct, those are the throws that can punish a defense. Safeties cannot sit comfortably. Linebackers cannot just squeeze underneath routes. The quarterback forces defenders to respect every part of the field. One throw in particular showed why this matters. Shedeur worked inside the pocket, kept his eyes downfield, and delivered the football through a tight area where the receiver did not have acres of space around him. That is not the type of rep where the quarterback can simply wait and react. He has to trust the route, trust the timing, and trust what he saw before the snap. The ball has to come out with confidence. This is also where his improved pocket movement becomes connected to the rest of his game. A quarterback can make the right read and still ruin the play if his feet are out of position. Last season, one of the concerns around Shedeur was that he could drift deeper instead of climbing the pocket. When that happens, the quarterback can turn normal edge pressure into immediate pressure because he moves directly toward the path of the pass rusher. The offensive line is expecting him to stay within a certain space. If he leaves that space unnecessarily, protection breaks down faster. What we are seeing now is a quarterback who looks more willing to trust that pocket. He can feel the edge closing, step forward, and still keep the play alive as a passer. That is a major difference. Running away from pressure and escaping a sack can look exciting.
They try to say he's not athletic,
It get
but
dangerous.
he's showing you what he can do with the olive greens. The olive green prime's on. Let's see He goes here. There's a little DT stunt. He works to the outside, keeps his eyes downfield, and delivers a dot. Just finding ways to get first downs for Shedeur. Pretty effective, pretty efficient so far. Again, I don't know nothing about no quarterback track. I'll put the quarterback track at the end. I'm tired of looking at the quarterback tracker. Y'all leave touchdowns out. Y'all don't count the right things. Other people's interceptions, disappear. But what we are going to focus on is what we can see. KC, boom. KC sitting down. Again, this one's just an easy, simple one. Shedeur is also working a lot of a quick game, getting his ball out, getting the ball out of his hand in a pretty good spot as well. And this is going to be a quick one here. Bow. There you go. There you go. There you go.
But consistently managing the pocket is usually what keeps an NFL offense on schedule. It gives the quarterback better throwing angles, helps the tackles know where their help is, and gives receivers an extra fraction of a second to finish their routes. Watson showed some of his own strength in this area as well. There were reps where pressure arrived quickly and he did not panic. He understood where his answer was, released the ball before the rush could fully affect him, and trusted the receiver to complete the play. That is veteran football. That is exactly what Watson needs to keep showing because it is one of the areas where he can remind the coaching staff why years of NFL experience still matter. But here is the problem for him. Shedeur does not have to match Watson rep for rep in veteran processing. He only has to become reliable enough that the difference stops deciding the competition by itself. If Watson is slightly better before the snap, but Shedeur gives the offense more explosive potential, moves better when plays break down and continues improving inside the structure of the system, then the Browns suddenly have a much harder decision. Experience still matters, but it cannot be the entire argument. This is where the Browns' quarterback battle gets dangerous if you try to judge everything by the tracker alone. On paper, Deshaun Watson had the cleaner completion percentage. Shedeur Sanders finished 13 for 21, while Watson was 12 for 17. If somebody wants to look at those numbers and stop the conversation right there, Watson had the more efficient line. But that is exactly why quarterback evaluation can get misleading. A completion percentage does not tell you how difficult the throw was, whether the receiver helped the quarterback, whether the ball was dropped, how much pressure was in his face, or what kind of situation the offense was in when the play happened. That matters because Shedeur had more than one rep where the final stat did not really tell the story of the throw. Jerry Jeudy had multiple opportunities where the ball was there and the play simply did not get finished. One of those was a deep shot that could have completely changed how people talked about Shedeur's day. The throw had enough on it, the opportunity was there, and instead of another explosive completion being added to the conversation, it became an incompletion on the tracker. That is football. Receivers are going to drop passes. Quarterbacks are going to miss throws. But if we are trying to decide who actually played better, you cannot pretend every incompletion belongs completely to the quarterback. That is also why this battle cannot become a numbers contest between Watson and Shedeur. The Browns have to evaluate what each quarterback is creating. Is he taking the easy completion because that is what the defense gave him? Or is he identifying a chance to attack before the window closes? Is he putting the receiver in a position to make a play? Is he protecting the football? Is he keeping the offense moving when protection gets messy? Those are the details that decide jobs. Shedeur showed a willingness to make some aggressive throws without turning every play into a reckless gamble. That balance is important. There is a difference between forcing a ball into double coverage and trusting a tight window because you understand the leverage.
Let you watch the video, full speed, Shedeur takes up, unloads, uncorks, and it just right through. I mean, come on. Right through. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe that. So Jerry Jeudy's up to his usual stuff, struggling. But we'll have the rest of the practice for you in just a second. And it looks like I might have told you a lie. This is why we focus on the positive. Shedeur Sanders in a 2-minute drill, in a real deal drill, when it's time to move the ball, drops an absolute bomb to a receiver. That might be play of the day so far.
Of the defender. Some of the throws over the middle showed that he was reading space rather than simply waiting for somebody to become completely uncovered. When you see a quarterback release the football into an area before the receiver has fully cleared the defender, that usually tells you he is throwing with anticipation. That is exactly the type of trait Cleveland needs to keep studying. Watson had his own version of that. One of his better reps came when the pressure got on him quickly and he knew he did not have time to sit in the pocket. He released the ball early to Tylan Wallace and trusted him to turn and finish the catch. That is the veteran side of this battle. Watson has seen enough pressure looks to know when the clock inside his head needs to speed up. He does not have to see the receiver standing open first. He can throw to the spot because he understands where the route is going. That is good quarterback play, and it is important not to ignore it, just because the bigger conversation around Cleveland has become so focused on Shedeur. If anything, Watson playing well makes the competition more interesting. If Watson were struggling badly every single day, the conversation would become simple. But that is not what we are seeing. We are seeing stretches where Watson looks comfortable and experienced, while Shedeur keeps producing enough difficult throws and enough growth to stop the veteran from completely controlling the competition. Then you get into the situational part of practice, and this is where the evaluation starts getting even more serious. Both quarterbacks were given a late 2-minute style situation with less than a minute to work from deep in their own territory. Both offenses managed to move into field goal range. That matters because this is closer to the kind of football coaches actually have to trust on Sundays. The defense knows you have to throw. The clock is working against you. Every decision matters more. Shedeur's drive included one of the biggest offensive plays of the practice, a deep completion that quickly changed the field. That is where his ability to create explosives becomes such an important part of this battle. Moving the football 5 or 6 yards at a time is useful, but a quarterback who can suddenly flip field position gives the offense another way to survive when time is running out. One accurate deep shot can erase several plays of work. Watson also answered with a strong situational finish, which again keeps this from becoming an easy comparison. But the fact that Shedeur continues producing those high-impact moments is why the Browns cannot just look at efficiency percentages and declare the veteran the winner. Watson may have the cleaner line. Shedeur may have the bigger play. Watson may show better veteran timing on one snap. Shedeur may show more movement and aggression on another. And that is what Cleveland has created for itself now. This is no longer a competition where one quarterback obviously looks like the starter and the other is simply trying to stay close. The difference depends on what you value most. If you value pure efficiency, Watson can make a strong case. If you value explosive potential, development, movement inside the pocket, and the ability to create when the offense needs something bigger, Shedeur keeps making his own case impossible to ignore. The most interesting part of this Browns quarterback battle might not be who had the better completion percentage or who made the biggest throw. It might be where the pressure is starting to move. At the beginning of camp, Shedeur Sanders was the quarterback who had everything to prove. Deshaun Watson had the experience, the contract, the NFL resume, and the expectation that he should be the more polished player. Shedeur was the one who had to show he could handle the offense, read NFL defenses, stay disciplined in the pocket, and avoid the mistakes that usually come with a younger quarterback. But after everything we have seen, that pressure no longer feels like it is sitting on only one side. Now Watson has to prove something too. He has to prove that all of that experience still creates a real difference. That is a very different situation. It is one thing to be the veteran when the younger quarterback is clearly behind you. It is another thing when that younger quarterback keeps getting better in the exact areas that were supposed to separate the two of you.
Sorry, I just got clips coming out the woodwork. They're everywhere. Here is another Shedeur Sanders, this time to Denzel Boston. And what you see from here on Denzel Boston is not only does he step up in the pocket, but then he threads the needle on this. I mean, very fearless throwing over the middle so far. He's been able to step up in the pocket. That's been something that's really been sticking out with me, right? And I might even put a video at the beginning. Even Joe Bitonio had to admit it. Everybody who's been at this practice has to admit that the things and some of the problems y'all have claimed. Look at Shedeur. No. Because we're not going to breeze past this. Because if he didn't do this, right, it would be a whole segment on ESPN Cleveland or whatever news show. I don't know. I don't even be paying attention. First off, shout out to Big Fanu handling business, boy. My pen is broken. I don't know why my pens are broken. I would love to circle it for you, but I can't. But hey, I'm gonna try it anyway. I got my pen back and it doesn't work. The pen still don't work. Hold on, wait a second. All right, the third time is the charm pen work. All right, there you go. You see Spencer Fanu, the rookie who has now been named to the first team, handling his business against Jared Verse. Come on now. But not only that, right? The offensive line is, of course, taught to build like a pocket, right? The reason why Shedeur's issue of drifting sometimes was a problem is because you don't have any help back here. In fact, you're making it easier for the pass rushers. Instead, Shedeur not only keeps his head downfield and keeps his eyes upfield, but instantly knows to feel the pressure, steps up, and then, threads the needle here. I think we're going to be talking about the Denzel Bond play, or not Denzel Bond, the Isaiah Bond play. Like, oh my God, he actually fit that between a defender and and a teammate. That's ridiculous. Everybody talks about wobbles and this and that, but it seems to be getting to the players pretty good and pretty accurately, as that is a bit of a ridiculous bit of placement there. He stands, he looks up, 2-6. Nah, man, he knew where he was. Don't play them games.
Every time Shedeur handles pressure correctly, every time he makes a clean check before the snap, every time he climbs the pocket instead of drifting backward, another easy argument for Watson starts getting weaker. That does not mean Watson has suddenly lost his advantages. He still sees the field through the eyes of somebody who has played far more NFL football. There were throws in this practice where you could see that experience show up. Pressure came quickly. Watson understood that the ball had to leave, and he delivered before the receiver had fully completed the route. That kind of anticipation is difficult to teach. It comes from seeing similar situations over and over again. But here is where the competition gets uncomfortable for Cleveland. Watson cannot just show that he still knows how to make veteran plays. He has to show that those veteran plays consistently make him the better option. If the gap is only small, then suddenly the Browns have to start thinking about everything else Shedeur brings to the table. That includes how aggressive he can be when the opportunity appears. Shedeur has shown that he is willing to push the football into areas of the field where a quarterback has to trust what he is seeing. He is not playing every rep like the goal is simply to avoid a mistake. When the window is there, he is giving the ball a chance to get there. That matters because a quarterback competition can look completely different when one player is not just managing the offense, but occasionally creating something the defense cannot easily answer. The biggest example is not even one specific deep ball. It is the mentality behind those throws. Shedeur has been willing to stand in the pocket, let routes develop, and challenge coverage. That is a big deal because one of the easiest ways for a younger quarterback to protect himself in camp is to become overly safe. Check it down, avoid the risky throw, keep the completion percentage clean, and hope the coaches appreciate the lack of mistakes. Shedeur has not looked interested in winning the competition that way. That creates a very different comparison between him and Watson. Watson can still win reps with experience, anticipation, and efficiency. Shedeur is trying to win reps by showing that he can give the offense another dimension while continuing to clean up the technical parts of his game. If he were making explosive plays but still constantly creating his own pressure or missing basic reads, Cleveland could probably live with keeping him behind the veteran. The problem is that those rough edges are starting to look less obvious, and that is where the offensive line becomes part of the evaluation too. When a quarterback climbs naturally instead of drifting, the entire pocket starts working better. Tackles can run edge rushers around the throwing point instead of watching the quarterback back directly into them. Guards know where the quarterback should be. The quarterback gives himself room to throw instead of forcing himself into a scramble. When Shedeur steps up and delivers through traffic, it shows Cleveland that he is beginning to understand how his movement affects everybody around him. Those are not flashy details, but they are the type of details that can decide who a coaching staff trusts. A quarterback can have a strong arm and still make life miserable for his protection. He can be athletic and still leave clean pockets too early. The real jump happens when the quarterback starts understanding that movement inside the pocket is part of the offense, not an emergency response after the play breaks down. Watson already understands a lot of that. The question is whether the understanding it better is still enough to create clear separation. At some point, this Browns quarterback battle has to stop being about who looks slightly better on one rep and start becoming about what kind of offense Cleveland actually wants to build. That is where this entire competition is heading now. Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders are not giving the coaching staff the same type of quarterback. They are giving Cleveland two different arguments, and after everything we have seen through camp, neither argument has completely disappeared. Watson's case is still built around experience, timing, anticipation, and knowing how to survive when the defense speeds the game up. There are plays where that shows clearly. He can recognize pressure quickly, understand where the answer should be, and release the ball before the pocket completely falls apart. That matters in the NFL because not every play is going to stay clean. Sometimes the quarterback has to know where the football needs to go before the receiver even finishes the route. Watson still has that veteran feel in moments, and Cleveland cannot just ignore it. But Shedeur's case is becoming more difficult to push aside because his development is showing up in areas that actually matter to winning this battle. He is not just relying on arm talent or trying to create something wild outside structure. He has shown better control inside the pocket, more confidence throwing into tighter areas, and more patience when pressure starts developing. Those are the exact things that can turn an exciting quarterback into a trustworthy one. And that word, trust, might end up deciding everything. Can Cleveland trust Watson to consistently give them the cleaner operation because of his experience? Can they trust Shedeur to continue playing aggressively without turning that aggression into unnecessary mistakes? Can they trust either quarterback when the protection breaks down, when the defense changes the picture before the snap, or when the offense needs a drive late in a game? Those questions are much bigger than one camp tracker. This is also where the receiver situation matters more than people think. A quarterback can make the correct read and deliver a good football, but the play still has to be finished. There were throws from Shedeur that did not become completions because the receiver could not secure the ball. That should not turn into an excuse for every miss, but it absolutely matters when comparing two quarterbacks based on raw numbers. If a deep ball is placed well and goes through the receiver's hands, the tracker only records an incompletion. The coaching staff sees something very different. That is why the Browns have to separate process from result. Did the quarterback read the defense correctly? Did he go to the right matchup? Was the timing right? Was the ball catchable? Did he stay composed when pressure arrived? Those are the things that tell you whether the offense can repeat success when the games actually count. Shedeur's work over the middle has been especially interesting because that area of the field forces a quarterback to process quickly. Defenders close space fast. Safeties can drive downhill. Linebackers can take away throwing lanes. The quarterback has to understand leverage and trust the receiver's route. When Shedeur attacks those windows successfully, it tells Cleveland more than a simple completion does. It shows confidence in what he is seeing. Watson has his own advantage there because he has been through those situations at NFL speed for years. But again, the question is not whether Watson is more experienced. Of course he is. The question is whether that advantage still creates enough separation to end this battle. That is becoming harder to answer. The late situational work only made that more obvious. Both quarterbacks were able to move the offense into scoring position in a short clock situation. That is the type of period where command becomes important. There is less time to recover from a mistake. The quarterback has to understand the clock, know the situation, and get the offense moving immediately. Both showed enough to keep their side of the argument alive. And Shedeur once again added the type of explosive play that can change the entire feel of a drive. That is something Cleveland has to weigh heavily. A quarterback who can create a large chunk of yardage on one accurate throw gives the offense another way to win. You do not want to live only on deep shots, but the ability to threaten the defense vertically can change how safeties play, how aggressive corners can be, and how much space opens underneath. Watson can still give Cleveland stability. Shedeur is making the case that he can give them stability while also adding more danger. That does not automatically make Shedeur the winner, but it does make Cleveland's decision more complicated than it probably looked at the beginning of camp. And that is what makes this entire Browns quarterback battle so difficult to ignore right now. After all the camp reps, all the rotation changes, all the first-team opportunities, and all the comparisons between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders, Cleveland still does not have the kind of obvious separation that would make this decision easy. Watson has had strong moments. Shedeur has had strong moments. Both have shown reasons why they believe they should be trusted with this offense. But the biggest change might be that Shedeur no longer looks like someone simply trying to stay in the race. He looks like someone forcing Cleveland to keep the race open. That does not mean the job should automatically go to him. It means the Browns now have to evaluate everything with more pressure than before. Watson still brings experience, anticipation, and a veteran understanding of how to deal with NFL pressure. Shedeur keeps showing growth in pocket movement, processing, timing, and the ability to create explosive plays. The more those weaker areas improve, the harder it becomes to separate these two quarterbacks based on experience alone. And that is where this gets really interesting moving forward. Camp can give you clues, but game situations are going to tell Cleveland much more. How does each quarterback react when the defense is allowed to fully attack? Who protects the football when the pressure becomes real? Who controls the offense on third down? Who can lead a 2-minute drive when there is no restart after a bad rep? Those are the situations that could finally create the separation Cleveland has been looking for. Because right now, Shedeur has done enough to make one thing clear. Deshaun Watson has not been allowed to simply walk away with this competition. Every time it looks like the veteran could start pulling ahead, Shedeur answers with another strong stretch, another difficult throw, or another sign that his game is becoming more complete. And if that continues, the Browns may soon have to make a much bigger decision than simply choosing who had the better training camp. So now I want to hear from you. After everything you have seen from this Browns quarterback battle so far, who do you believe should be leading this competition right now, Shedeur Sanders or Deshaun Watson? And what matters more to you at this point, Watson's experience or Shedeur's continued development and playmaking ability? Drop your answer in the comments, because this battle is only getting more interesting. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay locked in, because we are following every major development in this Browns quarterback race.